Hello and welcome to this metacognition.org.uk staff CPD video on metacognitive strategies to improve your metacognitive modelling. So, before we go any further, if you haven't gone to watch the CPD on an introduction to metacognitive theory, you need to go and watch that first. You can't skip ahead to this. The reason for that is because you will be able to better implement these strategies if you've got an understanding of the theory first. So go and check out the theory video and then do feel free to come back and watch these strategies. So the aims of this CPD. Firstly, I want to stress the importance of why we need to model in a metacognitive way and how this will support students' abilities. And then I'm going to give you as many strategies as I can to improve your metacognitive modeling. So I'm going to give you ways that you can do this without too much additional workload or any increased workload at all, hopefully. So firstly, the importance of modeling. I've mentioned throughout these videos that most of our metacognitive practice is implicit. We're not being explicit about the choices we're making. At best, students will guess what we're doing and guess correctly. They're not going to be able to do that all the time, and often they will guess incorrectly. When we're making decisions and justifications, we must be explicit about it. We would never expect students to implicitly pick up maths or history by just watching and observing. We would expect them to be explicitly taught and assessed. We explicitly explain things to them. It's the same with metacognition. We explicitly explain it through modeling. So, by modeling our metacognition, by modeling the metacognition of an expert, students will start to understand why we're doing it, how we do it, and they can then try it out for themselves. When students are trying out these metacognitive methods, it will start to become more automatic for them, and that's what we want. So, 8 main strategies in this CPD video for you, 8 different ways that you can adapt your modeling to just be slightly more metacognitive. As I mentioned before, no one size fits all. Some of these strategies might work for your class, some of them won't. Some will work for some classes, some will work for others, some will work for some subjects, not for others. You're your subject expert. You can adapt these strategies to suit the students, the subject, and the content that you have. And like I say, this isn't an exclusive list. There probably are more strategies out there, but I've just given you the main 8 strategies I would recommend to improve your metacognitive modeling. So, strategy 1, simple, explicit justifications. Any single time you are modeling something, provide justifications for everything you are doing. I think we do it most of the time, but I think there's still scope to improve, and it's just something to be really conscious and really aware of. So when you select one method over another, be clear that you select one method instead of another. Where there are multiple methods, explain which one you're choosing and justify that choice. Otherwise, students might not know there's another opportunity, another strategy, or they might think that they're not allowed to use the other strategy, or they might just be really confused. We need them to be consciously thinking about this, though. Consciously choosing a different cognitive strategy is incredibly important. If you're picking certain keywords, possibly you're going for an exam question, why do you pick those keywords? What is significant about them? Justify it and explain it. Or when you select one source over another, possibly in history or geography, why do you select that one source? We can't just quickly say, and so we pick source B. We pick source B because provide those justifications, model what you would want the student's thought processes to be. And obviously, there's a million different ways that we can do this. It removes the guessing aspect from the student. So obviously, at worst, the students aren't even aware that we're making a choice. But at best, students are trying to guess why we're making that choice. And yes, maybe sometimes they'll guess correctly, but often or not, they won't. We can provide clarity. We can provide justifications. Strategy 2, explicit processes. So I mentioned this in the previous video. Make the 2 metacognitive processes explicit. We go through the plan, monitor, and evaluate stage process and the knowledge of self, task, and strategies process. Several trillion times a day it feels like we're always planning, we're always monitoring to check progress, we're always evaluating. How many times do you plan, monitor, evaluate in a 60-minute lesson? It feels an infinite amount of times. So if we're doing that constantly, let's be explicit about it. Obviously, we're not going to say, I'm monitoring and I'm assessing that you can't do this, but we can be explicit about how we are planning, about how we are monitoring, and about how we evaluate the tasks that we are modeling and we are showing. So incorporate those stages into your modeling and your explanations. So I've given an explanation here, an example, sorry. So maybe pause the video, read through it, and see how I've got the key words in there to make the explicit processes. Strategy 3 is strategy comparison. So the idea here is to provide 2 or more, if there's more than 2, strategies and do them side by side. By providing these strategies side by side and working through task completion, you can begin to compare the strengths and weaknesses of both strategies. It shows students that there are choices available to them, and it can also highlight to students how one strategy might be more beneficial over a different strategy. It's also important here that you begin to model and explicitly justify and discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the respective strategies. There are some examples here of questions and discussion points that you could raise to support students in identifying the key differences between strategies. Strategy 4 is very, very similar. If you've got multiple methods to plan for a task, plan out the task side by side. Again, question students and build a discussion on why you would use a certain strategy, when you would use it, the benefits of one over the other, when the other one might be more beneficial. So again, doing it side by side facilitates your questions and facilitates that metacognitive discussion. Strategy 5 is quite similar to these. It's the use of a visualizer. So a lot of schools have visualizers, and these can be extremely helpful metacognitive tools to help us be explicit in what we are doing. So we can use these visualizers to demonstrate to students the stages that we are going through. We can demonstrate the planning we do. For example, highlighting keywords. We can show them the monitoring that we're doing, and we can show them the evaluation that we go through. So draw upon those 2 metacognitive cycles. I've given some examples here. Knowledge of task, like I mentioned. Draw out that key information and the requirements from a task. You might put a task down, a question down under the visualizer. Go through it with students and show, I'm highlighting this word because, I'm highlighting this phrase because, I'm highlighting this command word because. As soon as we're being explicit with students, they will go, ah, I see. And they can start to then replicate and repeat it themselves. This leaves the automaticity that we need students to be showing. Again, you can use it for planning. So if you're going through planning for a task, put the task into the visualizer and show students how you plan. It's not just even that you plan or what you include in the plan, but show students how you do it. How do you lay out your plan? Again, we're probably going to be more of an expert in planning than most of our students are. So show them how you plan. It's not just the content, it's how it looks, it's how it flows, it's how it supports that task completion. And then evaluation. So for example, you might put good, even better, or best answers and draw attention to the key vocabulary use or key phrase use or the content that they've put in there. So you can really model what you're looking for in different answers. Strategy 6 is to model working backwards. The idea here is you're given a question and you're given an answer, and you show students how you go from the answer back to the original question. And this is a fantastic opportunity to justify the stages, to really stretch students' thinking, and for you to show your thought processes with this. Because going from the answer to the question involves a lot more thinking. Not only is it backwards, but there's a lot more justifications typically. And so this is a fantastic opportunity for you to highlight what your thinking is. Be explicit about it. Strategy 7, what could the question be? So it's very similar to the previous one, but it's providing students with content such as goal-free problems. So provide them with a task without a question, just some information, a paragraph, some mathematical formulas, a shape, whatever it might be, and start to develop a conversation on what the question could be. What might it be given that information? So you can model your thought processes. Given a triangle with 2 angles given, the most likely question is to find the 3rd angle, because this is straightforward using this formula. That's one example there. You can also model these justifications, and you can also model the different strategies you could apply to that information. So for example, if you're given that triangle with two known angles, there are multiple angles you could work out, and hence there are multiple formulas and multiple strategies that you can use. You can then model these multiple strategies. And then obviously you can lead the discussion then, or you can get students to discuss on their own. What are the most likely questions? Why? What are the least likely questions? Why? How many marks would it be worth? Why? You can start to build up higher level questions, and you can start to demand justifications from students. Why questions? Strategy 8, a really important one, to model the use of scaffolds. So often we provide students with additional resources, times table grid, dictionary, thesaurus, whatever it might be. We give them additional resources which we think will help them. But we typically don't model them. It's really hard to model them, especially if we're just giving them out to one or two students. But if we're not showing students how to use them, how do we know they're going to use them effectively? They might do, but also they might not. If we model how to use a scaffold, we can do a few things. We can show them how to correctly use it and use it effectively, but we can also show students how it actually helps them. Because students might think, oh, I'm getting a scaffold because I'm dumb, I can't do it. But actually, we're giving them a scaffold to support this task completion. So by showing them how we use it and why it's useful, we're building students' knowledge and understanding of those scaffolds. Couple of examples there for you to pause the video and reflect on. Because we're modeling the scaffold, these scaffolds become more effective, students get a greater insight, and hopefully they will use them more effectively as well. Right then, those are the 8 strategies on modelling metacognitively, so I hope they've been helpful. Thank you for watching. As mentioned previously, more CPD and resources are available at metacognition.org.uk. Go to the teacher drop-down and select what you want to have a look at, and there'll be resources and CPD available there. More's being added all the time, so do keep checking back or follow us on Twitter. Remember, it is all free. I mentioned this in each video. If you're able to donate any pennies or pounds towards the website, this just helps keep the website costs down and would be greatly appreciated. Please do share it. The purpose of me putting together these videos in this CPD is so that teachers can benefit. The more that you share it, email it on, pass it on to SLT, teaching and learning coordinators, professional development coordinators, pass it on to them so that they can send it out to staff. The more people who watch, the more people who benefit. That's the purpose. That's our Twitter handle, so please feel free to follow. And the next CPD video is metacognitive strategies again, this time looking at ways that you can adapt your questions to become more metacognitive. So thank you for watching. Please go and check out the next video on metacognitive strategies, questioning. Thank you very much.